Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the arid heart of West Africa, down crumbling caravan paths where gold sparkled underfoot and salt could save or doom a kingdom. You're walking the trade roads of ancient Ghana, not modern Ghana, mind you, but a mighty medieval empire of kings, camels, and more wealth than your local crypto bro could ever dream of. The wind stirs sand across your sandals. The Sahel stretches out before you, dry, cracked, but buzzing with life. Donkeys bray in the distance. Nomadic children wave as their herds shuffle past, and somewhere far ahead, a trader chants a song in Sinink, the language of empire. You're not just on a stroll. You're escorting precious cargo, powdered gold, nestled in leather pouches, destined for cities carved from salt. You probably won't survive this if you mess it up. Bandits, dehydration, or an angry spirit at a cursed well could end your career faster than a bad Yelp review. But let's assume you've got the skills or the luck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're already lying down, drop your location and the time down in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start at the edge of the Niger River basin, watching sunlight glint off the water as traders load up the final goods for the trek north. The Ghana Empire, called Wagadu by those who live in it, rests snugly between desert and forest. That sweet spot lets it sponge up goods from both gold and cola, nuts from the south, salt and horses from the north. Gold is everywhere here. It's not dug out of deep, dangerous mines. It's panned from rivers, sifted by patient hands, sometimes found just lying about like lost treasure from a toddler king. But oddly, the locals don't use it much for day-to-day stuff. Why would they? You can't eat gold, and it makes terrible mosquito repellent. Instead, it flows northward, exchanged for something that literally keeps bodies from falling apart: salt. You pass villages built from sun, dried mud bricks, kids practicing wrestling moves in dusty courtyards, their laughter blending with the clinking of smiths hammering tools. In the distance, griots, oral historians, drone out epic tales under baobab trees. One legend they whisper claims that the Ghana king once fed gold dust to his pigeons. Just to show off, historians still argue whether this royal flex actually happened, or if it's the medieval equivalent of an Instagram stunt. By night, your caravan halts. A fire crackles. Someone shares dried goat and a precious pinch of salt. Even in this dry land, your body craves it. Without salt, muscles fail. Thoughts fog. Hearts falter. That's what makes this seemingly dull white rock more valuable than a chest of rubies out here. And with that, you understand why merchants risk everything for it. Why camels, those groaning, grumbling, weirdly elegant desert ships, will trudge weeks without water to bring salt blocks south. Why kings build whole towns to control its flow. And why you're keeping your pouch of gold close, tight around your waist, as you drift into sleep under a sky spilled with stars. Salt isn't just currency, it's power. The kind that builds empires, funds armies, and fills the treasuries of kings who know how to balance a trade route better than a spreadsheet. You think about the journey ahead, the scalding dunes of the Sahara, the wind, carved walls of the salt mines at Tagaza, the bustling markets of Kumbi. Every grain of salt you touch tonight holds the sweat, blood, and breath of 1,000 years of trade. Tomorrow, the journey north begins. But for now, the desert wind sings its lullaby, and the stars blink down like ancient eyes, watching over your first steps through Ghana's golden past. Morning seeps in slow and golden, the way it does when you're wrapped in rough wool under the shadow of a camel. You rub your eyes and sit up, the faint smell of yesterday's fire still clinging to your robe. The caravan's already stirring, merchants checking their packs, camels grumbling like grumpy old men, and somewhere, a drummer beating out a rhythm to signal departure. You stretch, crack your back, and remember, today you enter the realm of the king. And not just any king. This is the Ghana. Yes, that's his title, not just the name of the empire. The ruler of Ouagadougou doesn't walk into markets or haggle over goods. He owns the trade, levying a tax on every merchant who dares pass through his land. And when you finally reach his capital, Kombi Sele, you understand why everyone bows a little lower here. Kombi Sele looks like a mirage come alive. Half the city is Muslim, full of scribes, mosques, and scholars from the north. The other half, where the king lives, is all traditional Sonic flair, mud brick palaces, carved wooden pillars, and the rhythmic thump of ceremonial drums. The two worlds coexist, barely touching, like two apps open and split. Screen mode. As you approach the royal compound, your caravan is halted. Soldiers check your cargo. They're clad in woven cotton armor, some carrying iron, tip spears. A reminder that, while the Ghana might be fabulously rich, he isn't soft. The king's guards are loyal, battle, hardened, and utterly terrifying if you try to sneak past tax duty. And oh, the tax. For every load of salt brought in, a fee is paid. And when it's resold to the south, another fee. The king's scribes record it all with cowrie, shell counters, and wax tablets. A system so efficient it makes you think he could have made a decent living as a medieval accountant. You're led through the gate, past traders unloading slabs of salt the size of small tables. One man mutters that he lost 3 camels to a sandstorm, but the salt survived. That's how precious it is. You glance at your gold pouch again. Feels lighter now. Not just from the tax, but from the sheer weight of the system that surrounds you. Inside, the king's compound smells like incense and iron. You're granted an audience. Not with the king himself. Don't get greedy. But with a court official. He wears a robe that seems stitched from silver threads, and his voice has the kind of calm that comes from knowing you could be executed if you interrupt. He explains the rules. Merchants must pay tax. No one sees the king directly unless summoned. His word is law, and his wealth, unimaginable. Historians still argue whether he kept literal mounds of gold in his palace, or if that's just medieval hype. But one Arab writer claimed the Ghana sat on a throne flanked by golden dogs, so, maybe a bit of both. Still, it's not just gold and salt the king controls. He manages peace. This empire thrives because the roads are safe, the guards are paid, and the deals are honored. Traders from as far as Morocco, or even beyond, trust that if they reach Kombi Sele, they'll leave richer than they came. And just when you think it's all business, you catch a glimpse of ceremony. A royal procession emerges, a cousin of the king, perhaps, carried on a litter, shaded by ostrich, feather fans. Musicians flank him playing flutes and balafons. Even here, amid ledgers and taxes, there's pageantry, flair, and the timeless message of power must be seen to be believed. You leave the court with a stamped token, a license to trade further. One merchant pats you on the back. Survive the tax? He jokes. Now you can go lose your shirt to a Berber spice trader. You chuckle, but part of you wonders just how much longer this empire can stay so balanced. The merchants are growing in number. The northern scholars talk of religious reform, and somewhere in the desert, rumors swirl of a new kind of force rising. Less trade, more conquest. But that's tomorrow's worry. Tonight, you lay beneath the stars again, this time inside the walls of a city, both ancient and pulsing with life. The king may never know your name, but you've felt the weight of his influence, like gravity bending every path around a central sun. By now, the weight of salt presses, not just in your satchels, but in your bones. The desert air leaves your lips cracked, your skin dusted like a pastry. But you press forward, because you've learned something crucial. Salt is more than a trade good. It's survival. And in this dry, sun-scarred land, that makes it sacred. You're seated beside a Berber guide named Yasin, who's stirring a pot of millet with a pinch of salt as if performing a sacred rite. Without this, he says, holding up a grain, You'll go mad out here. Or dead. Usually both. Charming. Yasin. Still, he's not wrong. The human body can't survive without salt. It helps your cells absorb water, lets your nerves send signals, and here's the kicker. It was once so valuable it got Roman soldiers partially paid in it. That's where the word salary comes from. So next time you think your paycheck is salty, remember the Romans meant that literally. In ancient Ghana, salt meant life. For those deep in the forest zones to the south, where humidity made food spoil in a blink, salt was essential for preserving meat, fish, and sanity. Merchants would travel for weeks to get a single block, and sometimes they paid for it with gold. Yes, actual gold exchanged pound for pound. Let that sink in while you salt your next bland casserole. You remember watching a family in a southern village trade a small pouch of gold dust for one rough, grayish salt slab. The trader bowed, the villagers danced, and someone cracked a joke that the salt would outlive them all. They weren't wrong. Cut from ancient mines, these salt blocks often lasted years, kept in dry corners like sacred heirlooms. Historians still argue whether salt was truly more valuable than gold, or if that's just the romanticism of dusty scrolls. But out here, you feel the truth. Gold is shiny. Salt is life. Later that day, you cross paths with a caravan from the south, led by a woman with eyes sharp as obsidian and robes dyed with indigo. She offers you a slice of dried catfish, salted and smoked beyond recognition. It tastes like a briny plank, but you nod appreciatively. You're alive to chew it, aren't you? She says. Point taken. You ask her why her people journey so far just for salt. She tells you that in the rainforest, food rots quickly. That without salt, even meat caught that morning might turn fall by sundown. That salt lets people survive dry seasons and feed warriors on long campaigns. It's not flavor, she adds. It's strategy. In fact, the Ghanaian economy had long depended on this dual hunger. North for gold, south for salt. You're a living link in that chain. As you travel, each village you pass echoes the same rhythm. Salt arrives, gold departs, and life continues in the narrow spaces between. There's a moment one night when you reach a communal rest stop. A walled square where caravans bunk down and share gossip. You meet a salt miner from Tagaza, skin caked in white, who laughs when you flinch at the taste of raw salt. Try working in it, he wheezes. It gets in your eyes, your teeth, your dreams. You ask what drives him. He gestures around. This salt. It built cities, bought wives, paid warriors. You think gold did all that. He tosses you a sliver, jagged, translucent, almost glowing under the firelight. You roll it between your fingers, feeling its edges scrape your calluses. Strange how something so harsh could also be sacred. You fall asleep that night with salt crusting your lips and the stars winking high above. You dream of rivers turning to salt, of kings weighing slabs like treasure, of traders mapping their futures on dry winds and crystalline blocks. Salt isn't just trade. It's the thread holding everything together. And you're caught in its web, heart beating in sync with the ancient pulse of need and barter. You wake up sore and sunburnt, your body creaking like a worn out drum. It's caravan day again. But this time, you're not plodding through lush savanna or skimming village trails. No, today you cross into true desert. The kind where the sand doesn't just burn your feet, it laughs while doing it. Your camel gives you a smug look as you try to mount. You're not great at this. Sitting on a camel is less majestic transport and more wobbling atop a furry seesaw that smells like old sweat and bad decisions. Still, you cling on, because the Sahara awaits and there's no turning back. Camels are weirdly perfect. Their feet splay like snowshoes, their nostrils close against dust. They store fat in their humps, not water, despite what everyone says, but that fat can be converted into water, which is a neat little biological magic trick. They're also jerks. One tries to eat your head wrap. You're following a centuries-old trade path, the salt road from Tagaza. The sun is brutal. The air feels like it's been preheated to bake your soul mode. But the caravan moves on. Hundreds of camels strung together with ropes and discipline. Some carry salt. Others haul millet, cloth, or tools. A few even bear books, bound in leather and written in Arabic, bound for scholars in distant Timbuktu. Each step on this journey has a rhythm. The guides sing old songs, part GPS, part morale booster. The camels groan like bad harmonies. Your water skin swings from your hip, lighter with every slosh. Time stretches and folds in the desert. There's no real day or night, just light and dark and the sound of your heartbeat trying to keep up. Around you, the landscape shifts from endless dunes to flat rock plains called regs. They reflect sunlight like a giant mirror, and you squint until your vision starts throwing sparkles. You pass by a fossil bed where someone swears they saw an ancient whale spine. This place was ocean once, an elder whispers. Maybe it still remembers. Historians still argue whether these routes were mapped entirely by traders or partly guided by older nomadic paths and celestial navigation. Either way, you realize you're writing history itself. Every rock has been seen before, every dune crossed by someone desperate, hopeful, or brave. At one stop, the caravan huddles near a rare well. The water tastes like iron and goat, but nobody complains. Nearby, a seasoned trader tells you about caravanserais, desert inns once dotted along the route, funded by kings and merchants to keep trade alive. Most are sand now, buried, lost. But in their time, they were lifelines. Oozes of safety in a land where the wrong turn could erase you forever. He shows you his compass, worn smooth. It points to Mecca, not home. Trade and faith, he murmurs. Twin stars guiding us all. You're not sure if he's quoting poetry or just delirious from heat, but you like the sound of it. Night in the desert hits like a dropped curtain. One moment it's blinding, the next, it's velvet dark, and the stars explode above you. No cities out here, no lights to drown them. You can see the Milky Way stretched like spilled flour. The fire crackles. Someone brews tea, impossibly strong and absurdly hot, and you sip it because everyone else does, and honestly, you're too tired to argue. One young camel handler tells ghost stories. He swears the dunes move on their own. That if you sleep too close to a cursed hill, you'll wake up buried. Someone else jokes that sand demons hate the smell of garlic. You tuck a clove into your pouch, just in case. As you lie back, saddlebag as a pillow, you realize the desert isn't just a challenge, it's a filter. It burns away the unnecessary. All that's left is trade, breath, and survival. You're not just carrying salt. You're carrying centuries of trust, memory, and grit. And tomorrow, if the camels cooperate and the wind doesn't rise, you'll reach the city of salt itself, Gaza, where walls are made from slabs of your cargo, where salt is not just traded, but lived in. But for now, the desert sings you to sleep, not gently, but honestly. And under that star-heavy sky, you dream of salt castles and camel songs. At dawn, Gaza rises like a hallucination from the haze. Gray, shimmering boxy. You blink, rub your eyes, and yep, it's real. A whole town built from salt. The walls, the mosques, even some of the graves shimmer faintly with white crystals under the desert sun. It's surreal, beautiful, and a little itchy looking. As you enter, your guide warns you not to touch your tongue to anything. He's joking, mostly. Gaza isn't a glamorous place. It's functional, fierce, and smells like sweat and minerals. The people who live here aren't born here. They're sent. Miners, mostly enslaved or deeply indebted, brought by Berber or Tuareg masters to cut salt blocks from the ground like slicing cake from the earth itself. You watch them work. Men with sun, scorched backs swing iron picks into the crusty ground, lifting slabs that weigh more than you do. Each block is shaped, stacked, wrapped in palm fiber, then marked for the next caravan south. No coins change hands here, only salt and survival. And sometimes a whisper of gold. The houses, they're salt blocks, held together with brine and dust. When the rare desert rain falls, roofs are patched hurriedly with camel hide, or woven mats. Historians still argue whether Tagaza had permanent residents or was purely seasonal. But what's clear? This place exists for one thing: extraction. Your host for the night is an old man missing 3 teeth and 1 eye, but full of sharp laughter. He shows you a crack in his wall where a fox once tried to burrow in. Wanted to lick the salt. He cackles. Who wouldn't? He hands you a bowl of salty porridge, and despite everything, it tastes decent. Hunger helps. By the second day, you're allowed to help carry salt. It's heavier than you expect. Your back screams. You step wrong, twist your ankle, and the salt traders laugh kindly, but don't offer to help. You'll learn, they say, or the desert will teach you. In the evening, the miners gather for songs, not cheerful ones. Low, droning hymns about sand, sun, and how many friends they've buried. It's a strange kind of comfort. Even here, in one of the harshest corners of the trade network, music still threads through the pain. One fringe rumor you hear over tea: some believe spirits protect the salt mines. That if you try to smuggle a block without proper prayers, you'll be cursed to wander the dunes forever, your tongue swelling till it bursts. Probably superstition. Probably. Still, you catch a young miner muttering a chant before slicing into the earth. Just in case. Tagaza's salt isn't just for Ghana. It's bound for Mali, for Hausa markets, even as far as the gold, slick coasts. Each block you see stacked by the gate could be traded 6, 7 times before it reaches a final kitchen. Value multiplies with distance. You meet a merchant who offers you a choice: carry a block south with his caravan in exchange for a cut of the profit, or head back to Ghana the safe way. You take the block. It feels like holding a contract with history. Your camel groans under the added weight, but the journey resumes, salt-strapped like treasure. Your back aching, but your spirit weirdly light. As Tagaza fades behind you, its pale geometry dissolving into heat mirage, you realize this city isn't just built from salt. It's built on risk, on extraction, on the gamble that people, no matter how far, will always need what you carry. The desert wind rises, and you tighten your robe. The salt at your side glows faintly under the sun, a silent promise of profit, power, and pain, and somewhere far ahead Ghana waits. With its taxes, its gold, and its endless appetite for the shimmer of the Sahara. The return to Kombi Sale feels different this time. Your camel moves slower, the salt block tugging at its rhythm like a sleepy toddler. But you ride taller, sunburned and seasoned. You've seen the desert's teeth. Now, you're heading back into the empire's jaws, where gold jingles and gossip flows faster than the Harmattan wind. The gates of Kombi Sale are just as bustling, just as chaotic. But now, you know the layout: Muslim quarter to the east, royal city to the west. The smells hit first: roasting meat, perfumed oils, and someone's donkey. You dodge traders hawking everything from spices to snakeskins. And then you hear it, a whisper traveling through the crowd like a cracked drumbeat. The Berbers are coming. You catch pieces of rumor. Northern horsemen, bearded and armored, preaching pure Islam, criticizing the softness of Kumbi's scholars and kings. A trader claims they've already taken some outposts. Another mutters about a tax revolt. The city is a cauldron bubbling with faith, fear, and, economic anxiety. But for now, the markets don't care. You reach the trading quarter and unload your salt. A broker in a patterned robe inspects the block, chips off a piece with a knife, tastes it. He nods. Tagaza, good cut. Fair price. You negotiate. This time, you hold firm. You walk away with gold dust, a bolt of cloth, and, just for flair, a silver bangle. Not bad for a lump of fancy sodium. Later, in the shaded alleys, you pass storytellers spinning tales of past kings. One claims the Ghana once threw a banquet where he served camel meat soaked in gold. Sounds crunchy. Someone jokes, better with salt. Historians still argue whether Kombi Sale really had over 200,000 people, as claimed by medieval writers, or if that's just old, fashioned exaggeration. But walking its packed streets, you believe it. Every turn reveals something new. Scribes copying Quranic verses with fine ink, dancers practicing in courtyards, griots reciting epic lineages that stretch so far back they loop into myth. You're invited to a merchant's home for dinner, goat stew, rice, and, of course, salt. The walls are decorated with glass beads and polished brass. He talks trade routes like other people talk weather. Spices from the east, slaves from the south, horses from Ifriqiya. All come here. All pay the Ghana. You ask him how long he thinks the peace will last. He shrugs shoes and says, "As long as the king eats before the preacher speaks." That night, you wander toward the edge of the Muslim quarter. You pass a madrasa where boys study by candlelight. A teacher explains lunar phases with a carved gourd, using salt and millet grains to represent stars. Trade, he says softly, brought books as much as it brought gold. You pause at the city walls, watching the sky turn plum and rose. The city behind you buzzes with life, messy, layered, stubborn. But you sense change coming, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Kombi Sela isn't built for stasis. No trade hub ever is. You think back to the salt you carried. So plain, so heavy, and yet it unlocked conversations, alliances, entire lifeways. Salt carried you here. And maybe, in time, it will carry you further still, into stories not yet told. You head back to your corner of the city, the night pulsing with drums, prayers, and bartering laughter. Tomorrow, you'll consider your next move. North again, south to the forests, east to the unknown. For now, you sleep with gold dust under your mat and sand in your boots. And somewhere in the market dust, the gossip swirls the Ghana's court, the Berbers' demands, and the empire's golden heartbeat. A word count 1065 awaiting, COTINU. By now, you've seen markets erupt in color, camels collapse from heat, and traders argue over whose salt slab smells less like old feet. But today, you're about to witness something far stranger, something the Ghana Empire was famous for, the silent trade. You arrive at the edge of a clearing outside Kombi Sela, where the air buzzes with tension. No shouting. No bargaining. Just merchants setting up quietly, placing their goods in neat rows, and backing away like they're feeding a wild animal. Here's how it works. Traders from the south arrive with gold dust sealed in leather pouches. They place it near the goods they want, salt, usually, and then withdraw. The northern traders, often Berbers, approach, inspect the gold, and if satisfied, take it and leave the salt behind. If not, they walk away without touching a thing. No words, no haggling, just vibes and economic telepathy. You perch behind a dune, peeking over the edge like a nosy squirrel. You watch a Ghanaian trader tip a small mound of gold next to 2 slabs of salt. Then he retreats, folding his arms like a chess player who just made a bold move. The Berbers arrive, robes flapping, faces veiled against the dust. One kneels, pokes the gold with a stick, mutters something you don't catch. He nods. Salt for gold, deal done. No shouting, no receipts, no awkward. Can I Venmo you? It feels ceremonial, like the goods themselves are doing the talking. And that's part of the magic. The Ghanaian king enforced peace here so strictly that this mute ritual flourished for centuries. No need to know each other's language or even trust each other. Just respect the system. Historians still argue whether the silent trade was widespread or just used in specific places where language barriers made negotiation impossible. But you're watching it happen, and it's glorious. One trader explains it to you later, over a lukewarm calabash of tamarind drink. If you talk, you offend. If you touch too soon, you disrespect. Silence is safer. And in a world where slipping up can get you stabbed, silence really is golden. You try it once, just for fun. You place your leftover bracelet next to a carved ivory comb. Then you step back. The other trader eyes it, pauses, swaps it with a polished bead necklace. You nod thrilled. He nods back. It's the quietest business deal of your life. But it's not all smooth. One trader offers 2 little gold for a big salt slab. The Berber frowns, scratches a mark in the sand. A universal nope. The Ghanaian returns, adds more dust. They play this silent poker until the exchange feels right. Some scholars believe this wasn't just economics. It was diplomacy, a way to trade without risking insult, cultural clash, or conflict. And in a melting pot like Kombi Sali, that's no small thing. You also notice something subtler. The ritual has a rhythm, almost musical. Each step, retreat, and inspection follows a pattern, like a dance choreographed by centuries of tradition. It's slow, deliberate, and oddly calming. Later, a griot tells you an old tale of a trader who spoke during the silent trade and was struck mute forever by the spirits of the dunes. He's probably exaggerating, but you still whisper less for the rest of the day. As the sun dips, the traders pack up. Salt is gone. Gold is tucked away. No voices were raised. No contracts signed. And yet, wealth moved, relationships grew, and the empire thrived. You walk back through the whispering grass, a little richer and a lot more awed. In a world driven by noise, this quiet barter feels like ancient wisdom. And somewhere deep in your pouch, a polished bead reminds you that sometimes saying nothing says everything. The next morning, you wake to the sounds of haggling, hawking, and someone loudly trying to convince a camel it's not dying. You're in Kombi Sali's northern quarter, and the market's already boiling. But today, you're not just watching salt and gold pass hands. You're stepping into the shadows of the trade network, the unofficial lanes, the quiet deals, the spices, swords, and secrets. The main plaza is a riot of color. Tuareg men in indigo robes unload bundles of cinnamon, saffron, and dried dates. Arab merchants from the Maghreb arrive with fine steel blades tucked into jeweled belts. And somewhere, a soft, spoken Malink woman offers a bundle of kola nuts in exchange for a story. You trade her one about a haunted camel. She laughs like you're a professional. While salt and gold are the empire's backbone, these lesser-known goods keep the blood pumping. Spices fetch absurd prices in the forest zones. Steel swords, brought from North Africa, are luxury tools of war and status symbols among local rulers. Even simple needles and glass beads are considered wonders in some regions. You meet a middleman. Let's call him Kanda. Though you're pretty sure that's not his real name. Candy specializes in connecting people who don't want to be seen together. He deals in curiosities, desert truffles, sacred herbs, and a tiny mirror supposedly from Andalusia. His real treasure, information, gossip, rumors about Berber raids, secret alliances, and whether the king's new advisor is actually a spy. You ask Kanda why people trust him. He grins, showing 2 gold-capped teeth. Because I don't sell everything I know, he says. Only what they'll pay for. Historians still argue whether these fringe goods ever rivaled salt and gold in value, or if they just glittered on the margins. But here, now, it's clear they matter. They make people talk. Stream. In one smoky tent, you're offered a vial of oil said to cure snake bites, heartbreak, and camel flatulence. You buy it for the heartbreak clause. Next door, a man sells ancient cowrie shells from the coast. Money before money, he claims. Older than your grandmother's ghost. You start noticing the side deals. A group of Sanink youths bartering broken tools for storytelling lessons. A veiled woman trading polished stones for palm wine. A whispered exchange between 2 scribes. One passes a sealed scroll, the other a pouch that clinks. There's power here. Not loud, not royal, but real. These unofficial trades shift influence in subtle ways. They help new religions spread, bolster rebel warbands, fund poets who'll one day become court historians. You realize that empire doesn't run only on taxes and kings. It runs on favors, whispers, and the quiet greed of everyday people. And in the middle of this swirl, you, no longer wide-eyed, just watchful, learning when to speak and when to let the silence stretch like a well-placed pause in a story. By nightfall, you've acquired a woven sash, a dried lizard tails, don't ask, and a scroll of Arabic poetry you can't read but feel weirdly protective of. You've also lost a few coins and possibly offended a perfume merchant by sneezing near his display. But most of all, you've begun to understand. Salt and gold built the roads. But it's the spices, swords, and secrets that keep them busy. As you drift towards sleep, nestled in your merchant friend's compound, you hear a distant drumbeat and laughter from a nearby courtyard. Maybe it's just a party. Or maybe, just maybe, someone's celebrating a trade that could shift the shape of kingdoms. By now, your feet are tough as camel hide, your nose knows a dozen kinds of dust, and your stomach has officially declared war on dried meat. You've survived salt roads, silent trades, and backroom deals. But tonight, you'll step beyond trade. Tonight, you enter the spiritual heart of the Sonink, the people who built this empire, who whisper to the past and walk with the unseen. You're invited, quietly, respectfully, to a gathering outside the city. No market stalls, no drums, just flickering firelight, an old man with a voice like dry leaves, and a circle of watchers beneath a canopy of stars. This is no tourist show. This is Griot territory, where memory isn't just preserved, it's alive. He begins with a story, not of kings or battles, but of a rock in the hills that sings during storms, of ancestors who carved paths by listening to the earth's breath, of a sacred grove where the spirits of trade caravans are still thanked after safe passage. You don't ask too many questions. The Sonic world is layered, material and spiritual, intertwined like roots beneath the savannah. Their beliefs predate Islam's spread into the region, and even now, they exist in quiet tandem. Griots recite genealogies stretching back before the Ghana kings. Priests still bless traders before long journeys, and some merchants carry sacred stones tied in leather pouches to protect them from bandits and worse. You're shown one such stone, a dark lump flecked with quartz. This, says the woman holding it, came from the first salt mine. The spirit inside remembers every deal struck there. You don't touch it. You just nod, slowly. Historians still argue whether the Ghana kings themselves practiced these older beliefs or merely tolerated them to keep peace. But here, now, it's clear the spirits still walk. A young man offers you a bracelet of woven grass and iron. For safe travels, he says. Salt is useful. Spirits are loyal. Back in the city, you notice things differently. That carved post at the market gate. Not just decoration. It's a totem. That ring of stones outside a merchant house. An offering site. Even the tax office has a faded charm tucked above the doorframe, half hidden by bureaucracy. You visit a shrine near the river, where traders drop coins and murmurs into the current. You leave a sliver of salt, just in case. Better to be polite. Even your camel seems to step lighter afterward. Over dinner, your host explains the Sanink view of trade. It's not just movement of goods, but of balance, giving and receiving in harmony with the land, the spirits, and the ancestors. To hoard is to offend, she says. To cheat is to curse yourself. That night, you dream of a salt slab with eyes. It watches you, smiles, says nothing. When you wake, you don't feel afraid, just seen. The next morning, you're blessed with a mixture of shea butter, ash, and crushed leaf. You smell like a slightly overcooked salad, but your guide assures you it's protection. From heat stroke, you ask. From arrogance, he replies, and suddenly, this empire feels even older, richer. More than trade, more than kings. It's a web of relationships, seen and unseen, taxed and untaxed, remembered and whispered. You tie the bracelet tighter around your wrist, just in case the winds shift. You feel it before you hear it, a change in the rhythm of the market drums, a tightness in the voices of the merchants. Even the camels seem to snort more suspiciously. Word has arrived, the Almoravids are coming. At first, it's just a murmur, a dusty letter carried by a runner from the north. A scroll sealed in wax, marked with the twin palms of an unfamiliar imam. The Almoravids, Berber warriors from the Western Sahara, aren't just traders. They're reformers, zealots, preachers with blades. They claim to follow a purer form of Islam, and they are unimpressed with Ghana's laid-back religious fusion. To them, the king's tolerance of traditional practices is blasphemy. To them, trade isn't enough. Souls must be conquered too. You sit in the courtyard of a Kombi Sela scribe as he deciphers the scroll aloud. His hands tremble slightly. Submit to the will of Allah. It reads, or witness the fall of your idols and cities. Subtle. The king does not respond. Not publicly. But the soldiers train harder. The market's tense. A caravan returns from the north with fewer camels than it left with. The survivors speak of border skirmishes, villages razed, mosques claimed in the name of the Almoravid cause. Historians still argue whether the Almoravid invasion was truly ideological or just an excuse to seize control of the fabulously wealthy trade routes. But does it really matter to the people fleeing burned outposts? One evening, you meet a man from Autoghost, a northern town recently attacked. He speaks softly, like a man trying not to wake a beast. They came with Qurans and swords, he says. First they prayed, then they took. You notice the changes in the city. Preachers speak louder, with more fire. Some Sonic elders whisper that the spirits are angry. Traders start hiding their goods, moving wealth out of plain sight. The Ghana himself, usually silent and ceremonial, issues a rare proclamation calling for unity and vigilance. Your merchant friend Candy is nervous. The Berbers know the routes. They know the supply chains. If they cut off to Gaza, we all starve, or pay twice. He's already making arrangements to move some of his goods east toward Mali's emerging territories. Just in case, the Muslim quarter becomes more tense, split between those who welcome the Almoravids' message and those who fear their methods. Old friends begin to speak in hushed tones. Neighbors eye each other differently. You see a scribe burn a scroll, muttering that it could be seen as heretical. One afternoon, the air thick with heat and unease, a group of Berber traders is turned away at the gates, not with violence, yet, but with formality and a dozen guards. The message is clear: Ghana is watching, but so are the Almoravids. You begin to understand how empires end, not always with a bang, but with a whisper that grows. One doctrine, one tax, one sword at a time. You ask your Sonic guide what he thinks will happen. He shrugs. Maybe the spirits will defend us. Maybe the king will rally the tribes. Or maybe, he adds, it's just time for change. That night, you pack more tightly, sleep more lightly, and dream of sand turning red under moonlight. The road has taught you many things, but this lesson is new trade brings riches. But power, real power, draws blades. The fall doesn't come all at once. Empires rarely collapse in a single echoing crash. It starts in the cracks, small fractures in the rhythm of trade, tremors in the loyalty of allies, silent reshufflings of power while the king still pretends the walls are intact. And you're there when Ghana begins to fade and something newer, hungrier, rises in its place. Word spreads the Almoravids have sacked Kumbi Seli. Whether it was a siege or a stealthy takeover depends on who's telling the story, but the result is the same. The Ghana Empire, once the untouchable heart of trans-Saharan trade, is suddenly vulnerable. You return to the capital, or what's left of it. Some buildings still stand. The market limps on smaller, quieter. The gold still glints, but the confidence is gone. People talk less about expansion, more about survival, about adaptation. Historians still argue whether the Almoravids directly caused the fall, or if they merely accelerated a decline already in motion, triggered by overextension, resource strain, or internal rebellion. You suspect it was all of it, plus timing, and maybe a bit of bad luck. What's clear, the Ghana kings lose control of the trade routes. Tagaza's salt slabs start heading east. Gold begins pouring into a new power rising quietly near the bend of the Niger River, a place you've only heard of in whispers. A name starting to echo louder, Mali. You meet travelers who speak of a young leader uniting the Mandinka clans. A warrior, diplomat who can read the stars, command the rain, and win hearts with strategy instead of terror. His name is Sundiata Kida, and if half the stories are true, He's not just building a kingdom, he's crafting a legend. You follow the trade. Southward and eastward, the routes twist into Mali territory. There, new markets blossom. Towns like Niani hum with the kind of energy Kumbi once had, only more focused, more deliberate. You see it in the way goods move, and more importantly, in the way people talk. Where Ghana once taxed and enforced, Mali invites. Local chiefs pledge allegiance to the Lion King of Mali, not because they must, but because they sense something bigger. Sundiata, they say, respects tradition, honors griots, and builds alliances like bridges. And the gold, oh, it flows. The rivers here gleam with it. You visit Bure, one of the region's gold fields, and witness miners at work, digging, sifting, singing. The earth gives if you ask nicely. One jokes, you believe him. In a dusty town along the riverbank, you meet a woman who once lived in Ghana's core. She shrugs when you ask if she misses it. Ghana was the sun, she says, but the sun sets. Mali is the moon, rising. You begin to understand that empires aren't just maps or taxes. They're momentum, belief, confidence. And Mali, with its blend of Islam and indigenous traditions, its strategic marriages and brilliant leaders, is gathering momentum fast. One evening, you listen to a griot recite Sundiata's epic. It's long, winding, full of magic and revenge and triumph. By the end, half the listeners are crying. You're quietly in awe. Ghana had gold and order. But Mali has a soul. The last time you pass through what's left of Kumbi Sali, it feels like visiting a ghost. The walls crumble. The markets have thinned. The king, if he still rules quietly. The power has shifted. You feel it in your bones. And somewhere on the road east, you look at the salt in your satchel and smile. It still matters. It always will. But now, it moves along new routes, under new banners, toward a future you can almost taste. The trail you follow now glitters more than it grinds. Mali has not only inherited Ghana's golden legacy, it's about to take it global. You ride through a land rich in rivers and green horizons, where gold dust drifts like pollen in the breeze, and stories cling to the air. At the heart of it all is one man, Mansa Musa. You've heard whispers, of course. Everyone has. But now the whispers are chants. Musa, king of kings, lord of the mines, guardian of the faith. A devout Muslim, a political genius, and, crucially, the richest human being most people on earth will ever hear of. You're in Niani when the announcement is made. Mansa Musa is going on Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. No king from this part of the world has done it quite like this before. And he's not going alone. He's taking an entourage the size of a small city. Historians estimate he traveled with 60,000 men, 12,000 slaves, hundreds of camels, and, depending on who's telling it, between 20 to 80 tons of gold. That's not a caravan, that's a golden tsunami. You manage to join the edge of it. The air thrums with purpose. Camels are decked in embroidered cloth. Servants carry golden staffs. Every few miles, someone yells about a misplaced coin or someone stepping on a prince's foot. It's chaos, but rich chaos. In Cairo, where the caravan stops for supplies and awe, you witness the impossible. Mansa Musa's generosity crashes the local economy. He gives out so much gold to the poor, to traders, to scholars, that the price of gold drops for a decade. Imagine being so generous you cause inflation in a foreign country. Legend status? People come from miles around just to glimpse him. Artists sketch him. Scholars seek his patronage. The Cairo elite fawn over him. And Musa. He prays 5 times a day, funds a dozen mosques, and listens patiently to arguments about jurisprudence. Historians still debate just how much of his wealth was symbolic versus spendable, but no one questions the impact. Musa didn't just spread money, he spread Mali's name. For the first time, European and Middle Eastern maps begin showing Mali in bold ink, and not just Mali, a stylized black king holding a golden orb, often labeled Rex Mel. You travel with the caravan as far as Gao before peeling off. The roads behind you sparkle with stories. Towns you left months ago are already talking about Musa's journey. Markets swell. Mosques rise. Scholars pack their scrolls and head south. You hear of Timbuktu, how Musa, on his way home, scooped up architects and poets from Egypt and brought them to this riverside town. "We'll build libraries," he said, "and make knowledge worth its weight in salt." Even from afar, you feel the ripple effect. Traders boast of serving the man who gave away cities worth of gold. Villagers name their sons Musa. A griot begins composing the epic of the Pilgrim King, and you begin to understand the true power of trade, not just in wealth, but in myth. Musa traded more than gold. He traded a vision of a West African empire not just rich, but respected. Not just devout, but dazzling. When you return to Niani, the city buzzes louder. Trade routes have thickened. Salt moves faster. Gold prices fluctuate like leaves in the wind. But above it all, one truth reigns. Musa's journey changed everything. You sit by the river one evening, a small child playing with gold flakes in the shallows. He doesn't know what Mali was before Musa. And maybe that's the point. Empires rise with wealth. They ascend with faith. But they endure through the stories people tell. And Mansa Musa's story, it's just beginning. You arrive in Timbuktu not with a caravan of gold, but with a satchel of salt and a head full of curiosity. What you find is a place where desert dust kisses parchment, where the clang of traders' scales echoes alongside the murmur of scholars debating stars. Timbuktu. Yes, the Timbuktu. Sits on the edge of the Sahara like a mirage that grew roots. It's not the biggest city in Mali, but it is the brain. You expected another market town. What you get is a university with mud, brick walls, and centuries of knowledge packed into scrolls and voices. As you step into the Sankore Mosque, one of the city's 3 legendary centers of learning, a teacher is explaining how salt preserves not just food, but wisdom. Salt crosses borders, he says. Books do, too. You sit in the shade of a baobab tree as students debate astronomy, medicine, and the finer points of Maliki Islamic law. Their tools, ink made from boiled bark, pens carved from reeds, and minds sharpened by sand. You meet a young scribe who's transcribing a medical text from Arabic into Songhai. He explains that scholars in Timbuktu don't just study. They translate, adapt, refine. We don't copy the world, he says. We interpret it. Your salt slab suddenly feels like more than trade. It's a passport. In Timbuktu, scholars are paid in salt. Not because they're underpaid, but because salt stores value and respect. One teacher you meet has a stack of salt bricks taller than he is. This, he jokes, is my retirement plan. Historians still argue whether Timbuktu had hundreds of thousands of books, or just thousands. Either way, the manuscripts you glimpse on astronomy, law, history, poetry are dazzling and fragile. The pages flake like pastry. But the ideas, they're iron. You find yourself caught between 2 worlds here. The roaring, sweating, haggling trade hub you've traveled through, and this, quiet, precise, eternal. Timbuktu trades in thought. It hoards ideas the way others hoard gold. One afternoon, you visit a library maintained by a family for generations. The keeper is barely 30 but handles 700-year-old books like sacred relics. He lets you peek at one, a travel diary from a scholar who met Mansa Musa. It smells like dust and glory, and then something strange happens. A trader recognizes you from Tagaza. He waves, laughing. Still moving salt. You grin. Still worth its weight. He nods. But books? Books are heavier now. Later that week, you help deliver a slab of salt to a scholar who's writing a treatise on the ethics of trade. Wealth, he says, must circulate, like blood. Stagnant gold is poison. You scribble that down. It might be the smartest thing you've heard all month. Timbuktu teaches you a final truth. The greatest cargo across the Sahara wasn't just gold or salt. It was knowledge. Salt kept bodies alive. Books kept empires thinking. As you prepare to leave, your host gives you a small manuscript as a gift. It's not gold, he says, but you'll spend it every time you remember. The pages are worn, the script tight and looping. You don't understand all of it yet, but you will, because you're not just a trader anymore. You're a carrier of stories, of salt, of ideas. And as you mount your camel under a sky braided with starlight, you realize Timbuktu hasn't just welcomed you, it's changed you. The road away from Timbuktu feels different, less like departure, more like reflection. You've carried gold, salt, gossip, and scrolls. But now, it's something quieter that hums at your side. Memory. Echoes. The soft weight of things once spoken, once traded, still hanging in the air. You're back on the same sand. Scarred trails you rode so confidently before. Only now, you notice the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind that follows after greatness. After an empire shifts and another rises. Villages, once bustling with Ghana's coins, now pulse with Mali's drums. Market squares speak a different rhythm. Names have changed. Leaders have changed. But the trade winds still blow. You stop in a roadside town called Walata, a place that once served Ghana's merchants, now tied to Mali's scholars. The walls wear history like a second skin, scored with trademarks, tribal crests, even verses etched by bored travelers. At the market, you watch a boy sell salt by the pinch. His grandmother watches closely, making sure the scale doesn't lie. A customer pays in cowries, then touches the salt to his lips. Old habits endure. You ask the boy what he knows about Ghana. He shrugs. My grandfather said they had a king who rode a horse made of gold. You smile. It's not accurate, but it's something better. Folk memory, still alive. Later, in a shaded grove, a griot begins a song. Not of Musa, not of Sundayada, but of a merchant who rode from gold to salt and back again. You freeze. He's telling your story, or something close to it. A trader, a traveler, a witness. He didn't conquer. The griot sings. He remembered. And it hits you, this is how it lasts. Not in tax records or royal decrees, but in story. In laughter around fires. In children humming tunes about kings with silver dogs. Historians still argue whether trade built the empires or merely fattened them. But as you pass through Gao, Jenin, and a dozen other settlements, you see the through line where salt is sold, people gather. And where people gather, power pools. Even centuries after Ghana's peak, the roads it carved still shape West Africa. Routes first opened for gold and salt now carry cola nuts, textiles, even news of foreign ships on the coast. The trade lives on, not in stone, but in habit. You pause near the bend of the Niger. Watching boats bob like lazy crocodiles, a merchant next to you taps a slab of salt. Funny. He says, you can build kingdoms from something that melts in rain. You nod. But salt doesn't really vanish. It dissolves. Flows forward. Joins something bigger, like Ghana, like Mali, like every trade, every tale, every footprint baked into this ancient road. As you ride on, the sun dipping behind dunes, you feel the stories cling to your back like your travel robe. You're no longer just a wanderer. You're a thread in the fabric now. A walking archive. Salt. Gold.
Memory. All of it still matters.
You reach the coast just as dusk kisses the horizon. The air is thicker here, saltier in a different way. Tinged with ocean, not desert. You hear the crash of waves long before you see the sea. And when you do, it stretches so wide and blue. It swallows everything you thought you knew about distance. You've walked, ridden, and bargained across empires. You've seen Ghana's rise and Mali's bloom, touched gold dust, tasted salt so pure it crackled on your tongue. But here, at the edge of the continent, the Atlantic sings a new rhythm. The local port hums with activity. Boats carved from single tree trunks bob beside more modern vessels. Fishermen haggle with spice traders. A sailor mentions Portuguese ships. You blink. Portuguese. The world is changing again. You visit a small coastal market where, alongside baskets of pepper and smoked fish, someone is selling salt. Not from Tagaza. Not even from the desert. This is sea salt. Gleaming, flaky, and strangely light. You taste it. Less dry, more ocean-kissed. Different. But still salt. And that's when it hits you, salt still matters. Even here, even now. Historians still debate whether it was gold or salt that had the deeper impact. But from what you've seen, trade routes that grew towns, kings who guarded caravans, empires that measured power in salt blocks. It was always salt holding the bones together. You talk to a young woman selling cola, nuts beside dried anchovies. She laughs when you mention Tagaza. My grandmother said they built houses out of salt. You nod? They did? She leans closer, and now we build stories from it. The connections are everywhere. In food, in speech, in the rhythm of trade, still pulsing through coastal towns. You recognize place names from old caravan routes, family names that trace back to Soninke royalty. Even the word, Ghana, returns, not as an empire, but as a modern country carrying the echo. You ask a fisherman what salt means to him. He shrugs. Fish doesn't last without it. People don't last without fish. Simple, precise, truthful. As you wander the shoreline, you notice a small boy digging in the sand. He's making a trade route. Tiny stones for cities, shells for traders, driftwood for camels. He adds a salt crystal at one end. That's the important part, he says. And he's right. Salt shaped borders, cities, even beliefs. It forced alliances and funded scholars. It kept food fresh, people alive, and empires running. Long after Ghana's kings turned to legend and Mansa Musa's gold settled into myth, salt kept moving. Quiet. Consistent. Undeniable. You sit on a rock, watching the tide pull back, revealing glinting crystals on the beach. And in that shimmering light, you feel the centuries behind you, dusty, golden, salt-laced. And ahead, a future still marked by trade, by story, by survival. The road never really ends. It just curls back into the waves, waiting for another set of footsteps. Maybe yours. Now, slow your breath. Let your shoulders drop. We've traveled far tonight. Through ancient empires, across endless dunes, beneath starlit skies. The road was long, and the tales were thick with gold, salt, and echoes of voices that still linger. Close your eyes and imagine the hush of desert wind against your cheek. The gentle sway of a camel beneath you. The low murmur of traders around a fire. Salt slabs stacked like promises. Gold dust trickling between fingers. And somewhere far ahead, a river bends quietly toward tomorrow. You've seen how empires rise, not just with armies, but with intention. With trade, with trust. And yes, with salt, you felt the weight of silent deals and loud legends. You've stood in sacred groves and dusty libraries. And now, here at the edge of everything, you rest. Let the names drift away. Tagaza, Kumbi Sali, Timbuktu like sand through your fingers. What remains is the rhythm. The journey. Yours. Thanks for walking the salt road with me.